A first date is often filled with excitement, anticipation, and the hope that something special might be unfolding. You dress your best, put on your most charming smile, and engage in deep, meaningful conversations. Everything seems to be going well. There's laughter, eye contact, and a genuine connection, or at least it feels that way. But then, now of nowhere, he disappears. No call, no text, no explanation. It leaves you wondering what went wrong. One of the biggest reasons for this sudden disappearance is that first impressions aren't always as accurate as they seem. When two people meet for the first time, they are often not presenting their most authentic selves. Instead, they showcase a carefully curated version, one that highlights their best qualities while downplaying or even concealing their flaws. It's human nature to want to impress, and in doing so, people sometimes overextend themselves, creating a temporary illusion of compatibility. Additionally, the excitement of a first date can create a false sense of connection. The environment, the setting, and even external factors such as music, good food, or a few drinks can enhance the overall experience. In that moment, everything feels effortless, and both individuals may believe they are more compatible than they actually are. However, once the initial rush fades and real life resumes, perspectives often shift. What seemed like undeniable chemistry might have just been the thrill of the moment. Another key factor is the pressure to conform to social expectations. Many people feel an unspoken obligation to be polite and engaged, even if they are not genuinely interested. They might laugh at jokes they don't find funny, nod along to stories they don't really care about, or act more invested than they actually feel. This can lead to mixed signals. While one person may walk away feeling confident that the date went well, the other might have already decided that there won't be a second meeting but lacks the courage to say so outright. Sometimes it's not even about the date itself but about timing. A person might be navigating personal struggles, unresolved past relationships, or an uncertain phase in their life. They might have entered the date with an open mind, but later realized they are not truly ready for something serious. Instead of communicating this, they choose the easier, more cowardly route, disappearing. Physical attraction also plays a significant role in how first impressions are formed. Attraction can be tricky. It might seem strong in the moment, but fade once someone has had time to reflect. Maybe there was an initial spark, but upon further thought, they realized the connection wasn't deep enough to pursue further. This can be disappointing, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything was wrong with you. It simply means that their perception changed once they stepped away from the heightened emotions of the date. First impressions are powerful, but they are not always accurate. Sometimes they create illusions of compatibility that dissolve once reality sets in. The key is to remember that if someone disappears after a first date, it often has more to do with them than with you. When two people go on a first date, they often carry with them a set of expectations, some conscious, others deeply ingrained and unspoken. These expectations shape how they perceive the date, how they interpret the other person's words and actions, and ultimately how they decide whether to continue pursuing the connection. The problem arises when those expectations do not align. What feels like an amazing experience to one person might be just a casual evening to the other. This misalignment can be one of the biggest reasons why someone disappears after a seemingly great first date. People enter the dating world with different intentions. Some are looking for a serious long-term relationship, while others are simply exploring, seeking companionship without commitment, or even dating just for fun. When these intentions are not clearly communicated, misunderstandings can occur. For example, if one person is envisioning a potential future together, while the other is just passing the time, the interaction might feel entirely different for each of them. Even if the conversation flows well and the chemistry seems strong, the person who isn't looking for anything serious may choose to walk away rather than address the misalignment directly. Unspoken expectations also play a role in how people interpret gestures, words, and actions. A compliment, a lingering gaze, or even a playful touch might be seen as a sign of deep interest by one person, but could simply be a natural part of the other's personality. Similarly, the effort put into planning the date might hold different meanings. If one person sees an elaborate plan as a sign of emotional investment, while the other views it as a routine courtesy, disappointment can set in. When these expectations don't align, one person might assume that something significant is developing only to be met with silence afterward. Another factor contributing to misalignment is how people process emotional connections. Some individuals require multiple dates to develop feelings, while others decide quickly whether they see long term potential. If one person leaves the first date already envisioning a future together while the other is still uncertain, it can create a silent gap between them. The one who is unsure may feel pressure or discomfort, leading them to withdraw rather than engage in an honest conversation about their lack of clarity. Cultural and personal beliefs about dating also play a role in this dynamic. Some people believe in moving slowly, getting to know someone over time, while others expect an immediate emotional connection. If one person interprets a lack of immediate passion as a sign that something is missing, they might disappear rather than invest further. The real issue with unspoken expectations is that they often go unaddressed. Instead of having an open dialogue, people rely on assumptions, which can lead to confusion and disappointment. The silence after a seemingly successful date is often not about something that was said or done wrong, but rather about an unspoken misalignment in what each person was looking for from the very beginning. One of the most common yet least discussed reasons someone disappears after a first date is the fear of confrontation. Many people, regardless of their maturity level or life experiences, struggle with delivering uncomfortable truths. It is much easier to vanish into silence than to have a direct conversation that might lead to disappointment, awkwardness, or conflict. This avoidance of confrontation isn't necessarily malicious. It often stems from a deep seated discomfort with hurting someone's feelings, dealing with emotional reactions, or simply facing an unpleasant conversation. For many, telling someone they are not interested after a date feels like an unnecessary conflict. They may rationalize that since they don't owe the other person anything, it's better to slip away quietly than to engage in a potentially uncomfortable discussion. In their minds, ghosting is the easier route, one that avoids explanations, defenses, or the possibility of an argument. But while it may seem like a harmless escape, the person left behind is often left with confusion, self doubt, and unanswered questions. Society plays a role in this fear of confrontation as well. Many people are taught from a young age to avoid direct rejection because it is seen as harsh or unkind. Instead, they are encouraged to be polite, non confrontational, and to let people down easy. However, in an attempt to spare someone's feelings, they may actually be causing more harm by leaving them in a state of uncertainty. A simple message saying, I had a nice time, but I don't think we're a match, could provide closure, but avoidance leaves the other person wondering what went wrong. Another factor that contributes to this fear is the unpredictability of reactions. Some people take rejection well, accepting it with grace and moving on, while others might react with anger, frustration, or sadness. Those who ghost may fear that their honesty will be met with an emotional outburst, an argument, or even pleading for another chance. To avoid dealing with these reactions, they choose silence instead. There is also a personal discomfort that comes with rejecting someone. It can trigger guilt, especially if the date itself was pleasant. If there was laughter, good conversation, and shared interests, breaking the news that there won't be a second date might feel unnecessarily cruel. This inner conflict leads many to believe that disappearing is the lesser evil, out of sight, out of mind. Technology and modern dating culture have made ghosting even more common. With the ability to block, mute, or simply ignore messages, people find it easier than ever to avoid difficult conversations. The digital world creates a sense of detachment, making it feel less like abandoning a real person and more like quietly exiting a conversation thread. At its core, the fear of confrontation is about self-preservation. It is not always about the other person. It is often about protecting oneself from guilt, discomfort, or an emotionally charged situation. Unfortunately, while it may be the easier route in the moment, it leaves behind a trail of confusion and unanswered questions for the one left wondering what happened. Sometimes a person's sudden disappearance after a first date has little to do with the date itself and everything to do with their personal baggage or external circumstances. While it's easy to assume that if someone ghosts, they simply weren't interested, the reality is often more complicated. People carry their past experiences, emotional wounds, and personal struggles with them, and these factors can heavily influence how they behave in dating situations. Personal baggage often comes in the form of unresolved past relationships. Someone might go on a date hoping to move on from an ex, only to realize they are not emotionally ready. They may have convinced themselves that they were open to something new, but after the date, old emotions resurface, leaving them feeling confused or guilty. Instead of explaining this, they might withdraw, not wanting to burden someone new with their unresolved feelings. Another common issue is emotional unavailability. Some people enjoy the idea of dating but are not truly in a place where they can invest in a relationship. They might be struggling with trust issues, insecurities, or deep-seated fears of commitment. A first date can serve as a reality check, making them realize they are not ready to open up to someone new. Rather than facing this truth head-on and communicating it honestly, they may disappear as a way to avoid dealing with their own emotional complexities. In some cases, external factors unrelated to the date itself can play a significant role. Stress from work, family issues, financial struggles, or personal health concerns can all make dating feel overwhelming. Someone might have genuinely enjoyed the date, but after returning to their daily life, realize they simply don't have the mental or emotional capacity to pursue a connection. When life feels chaotic, adding a new romantic prospect can seem like too much to handle. Instead of addressing this, they might choose to pull away in silence, assuming it's the easiest way out. Fear of vulnerability can also contribute to someone disappearing. If the date was particularly good and they felt a strong connection, it might scare them. Some people are so used to emotional detachment that the idea of genuine intimacy triggers anxiety. They may fear getting hurt, repeating past mistakes, or losing their sense of independence. In an attempt to protect themselves, they create distance even if the connection was promising. Timing is another external factor that can affect dating behavior. Someone might be on the verge of a big career move, dealing with a personal crisis, or simply in a transitional phase of life. They might have gone on the date hoping they could make it work, only to realize afterward that they are not in a position to build something meaningful. Instead of explaining their situation, they may choose to disappear to avoid a complicated conversation. While it's frustrating to be left without answers, it's important to remember that someone's disappearance is often more about their own struggles than about anything you did wrong. Their baggage, fears, and external pressures influence their actions, even if they fail to communicate them. A first date can be filled with laughter, engaging conversation, and an undeniable spark. You might feel an instant connection, a magnetic pull that makes you think this could be something special. But then, just as quickly as the excitement began, it vanishes. He disappears without explanation. One of the biggest reasons this happens is the fundamental difference between chemistry and compatibility. While chemistry is about immediate attraction and excitement, compatibility determines whether a relationship can truly last. Chemistry is that electric feeling, the butterflies in your stomach, the way your heart races when you're around someone. It's the effortless conversation, the shared laughs, the flirtation that feels natural. Chemistry is often fueled by physical attraction, body language, and even the novelty of meeting someone new. It can create an intoxicating experience, making the date feel perfect in the moment. But chemistry alone is not enough to sustain a relationship. Just because two people have a great time together doesn't mean they have the deeper qualities necessary for a lasting connection. Compatibility, on the other hand, is about shared values, long-term goals, and emotional alignment. It determines whether two people can truly build something meaningful beyond the initial excitement. You can have strong chemistry with someone who doesn't share your vision for the future, who has different priorities, or whose lifestyle clashes with yours. When the high of the first date wears off and reality sets in, these differences become more apparent. The person who disappeared may have enjoyed the date but realized that, despite the spark, there wasn't enough substance to move forward. Sometimes people mistake chemistry for real potential. A thrilling, engaging conversation can create the illusion of deep connection, but that connection may not hold up when it comes to more serious discussions about life goals, values, or personal growth. Someone might leave a date thinking, that was fun, but we don't really align in the ways that matter. Instead of addressing this outright, they may choose to fade away, avoiding the discomfort of having to explain why the excitement wasn't enough. Additionally, chemistry can be misleading. It can be influenced by external factors, atmosphere, physical attraction, or even the thrill of something new. The rush of a great first date can make someone temporarily overlook red flags or deeper incompatibilities. However, once they reflect on the experience, they may realize that while the date was enjoyable, there's no real foundation for a future together. Another factor is how each person defines a meaningful connection. Some prioritize passion and intensity, while others look for stability and emotional security. If one person is drawn to fiery chemistry and the other seeks long-term compatibility, they might not be on the same page about what they need. This realization can lead one person to pull away even after what seemed like an amazing date. The reality is that both chemistry and compatibility are important, but one without the other often leads to disappointment. When someone disappears after a great date, it's possible they felt the chemistry but didn't see the deeper connection needed to sustain something real. When someone disappears after what felt like a promising first date, it can leave behind a whirlwind of emotions, confusion, frustration, and even self-doubt. The absence of an explanation can be more unsettling than rejection itself, making it difficult to fully process what happened. In these moments, closure becomes a powerful tool for healing and moving forward. While we often hope for closure to come from the other person, true closure is something we must find within ourselves. Closure is about understanding that not every connection is meant to last and that someone else's actions are not a reflection of your worth. It's easy to fall into the trap of overanalyzing the situation, replaying the date in your mind, searching for clues, or wondering if you said or did something wrong. But the truth is, people leave for their own reasons, many of which have nothing to do with you. Whether it's personal baggage, emotional unavailability, or simple incompatibility, their decision to disappear is more about them than it is about you. The absence of closure from the other person can make moving on feel more difficult, but it also presents an opportunity for self-growth. Instead of waiting for an explanation that may never come, choosing to create your own closure is an act of self-care. This means accepting that sometimes you won't get all the answers and realizing that closure isn't about receiving a final conversation, it's about making peace with what happened. One way to achieve this is by shifting your perspective. Instead of seeing their disappearance as a personal rejection, view it as redirection. If someone lacks the emotional maturity to communicate their feelings, they're not the kind of person you need in your life. Their absence clears space for someone who will appreciate and respect you enough to be honest. Holding on to resentment or waiting for an explanation only prolongs your pain. Letting go is not about excusing their behavior, but about freeing yourself from the weight of unanswered questions. Another important part of moving on is focusing on self-worth. A single date does not define your value. Just because one person chose not to pursue something further doesn't mean there is anything wrong with you. Confidence comes from understanding that your worth is not dependent on someone else's interest. Engaging in self-care, surrounding yourself with supportive friends, and continuing to put yourself out there can help reinforce this mindset. It's also helpful to embrace the unpredictability of dating. Not every connection will turn into something meaningful, and that's okay. Each experience, even the ones that end in silence, teaches you something about what you want and deserve. Rather than dwelling on the loss, focus on the possibilities ahead. Every closed door leads you one step closer to the right one. In the end, closure isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. And when you choose to move forward with confidence and self respect, you reclaim your power and open yourself up to better things ahead.